Steelix! It has been a minute since we've had a Steelix deck, a Pokemon that normally gets very tanky representation in the TCG. Harkening back to its origins in Neo Genesis, these Steelix decks are always about tanking damage, healing off that damage, and just powering through your opponents. This deck is no different. Dark Steelix is both a dark type and a steel type, as it should be. It's right there in the name of the card. That means you get to take advantage of both special darkness energies and special metal energies. It's a stage 1 Pokemon with 110 HP, which is very nice because this is a turn 2 deck. Much like the Dark Slowking deck that we've already featured on the channel, you want your stage 1 Pokemon out and attacking for huge damage on turn 2 to try to outmaneuver and outspeed your opponent, ruining their setup by dealing way more damage than they are prepared to deal with that early in the game. Because it's a turn 2 deck, there are only 12 Pokemon featured here, 8 of them being a 4/4 Steelix line. Onix is pretty bulky on its own, coming in as an 80 HP basic. You just have to hope that you never get caught having to attack with this thing because it is not good. At first glance, the Dark Steelix looks like a pretty vanilla card. Heavy impact, 60 damage for 4 energy, not great, but you have this great energy recycling acceleration ability in Energy Link for 2 colorless energy. Deal 20 damage, take an energy card from your discard pile and attach it to Dark Steelix. Note that it doesn't say basic energy. This is going to allow you to grab those special darkness, those special metals, and attach them directly to Dark Steelix for next turn. So this isn't a turn 2 deck in the same sense that the Dark Slowking deck was. This is a turn 2 you're dealing 20 damage, but turn 3 you can deal upwards of 90 damage, or you can just make Dark Steelix extra bulky with metal energies, or a mix of both, just depending on what the situation needs. Getting to 4 energy for a heavy impact is no problem at all, but putting damage counters on Dark Steelix and keeping them there is a huge problem for your opponent, and that is the entire deck. To avoid having to mulligan over and over and over again as much as possible, we do have 4 copies of Jirachi in here as a support Pokemon. Jirachi is actually a great Pokemon to start the game with. If it's in the active position and you can use a Wishing Star, that's an easy way to pick one singular card out of those top 5 and start chaining into other trainer and supporter cards to get the Onix and the Dark Steelix into play pretty easily. You're really just trying to get 2 energy onto a stage 1 Pokemon, and that's your entire setup, so you don't have to look for that many different cards. In doing so, you also want to get a special energy card into the discard, but that's also pretty simple to do. If you can draw into it or Wishing Star your way into a TV reporter, well, then you're going to be drawing yourself 3 cards and getting a special energy card of your choice from your hand into the discard, so that once Dark Steelix is set up, you have everything you need to be fully powered on the next turn. The only part of this process that can be somewhat annoying is the fact that Jirachi has a 1 energy retreat cost, so it can delay you a turn just having to get that energy onto Jirachi, retreating it for the Dark Steelix, but then it just becomes a turn 3 deck and you're still really not that far behind in the game on turn 3. The rest of your draw power is going to come from the usual suspects: Steven's Advice, Rocket's Admin, Copycat. All of them are great in their own situational ways. Because this is a turn 2 deck and it's so light on strategy, you don't have to worry about filling the deck with support Pokemon that need particular powers and bodies to really get the engine going. All you're doing in this deck is drawing cards and healing. And the simple act of drawing cards is going to get you all the healing cards. So half of this deck is really just, hey, draw cards so that you have the Pokemon and energy you need, and then there's also some healing cards jammed in here so that Steelix stays alive longer. Life Herb is by far the best method of doing this. You flip a coin. If heads, you heal off 6 damage counters from one of your Pokemon. 60 damage is a lot. And you're healing off special conditions too. The only downside, you have to flip a coin, but it's not really a downside most of the time, because with this deck, you're just going to say, "Aw, gosh darn it, I flipped tails. Well, I'm just going to play another one from my hand." In most mid-game scenarios, Life Herb is just going to be able to erase whatever your opponent did on their turn, as far as damage and disruption goes at least. We also have Potion in here for the early game. Whenever your opponent's just dealing chip damage to you, you're going to sweep that away with a Potion. Feels a little strange to have a full playset of Potion in a competitive deck, but that's really just because there aren't better alternatives in 2005. This deck even runs Oranberry, which is just a worse version of Potion, because you can only attach one at a time. Yeah, it does happen between turns, so you can technically attach it, and then if your opponent deals damage to you on their turn, when it comes back to you, you can heal it. Whatever, it's worse than Potion. Because this deck runs Jirachi, we're also gonna run Swoop! Teleporter. The trick here being that when you have a Jirachi in the active position, you use Wishing Star to get a free card out of your deck. You then use Swoop! Teleporter on that Jirachi to grab another Jirachi to put into the active position, and you use Wishing Star again to get another free card. And you know what? If you've got another Swoop Teleporter in your hand, you can use it again to do the same thing and draw a third card off of a third Jirachi. And perhaps off of those Wishing Stars you chose to just grab another Swoop Teleporter. Guess what? You can use the fourth one, but this time when you discard the Jirachi, you actually just put an Onyx into play, and then you get to bypass its retreat cost. This also makes it so that Jirachi doesn't have to sit on your bench and removes its liability of being a bench target for sniping. Speaking of, this deck does have one last trick in the form of Rocket's Tricky Gem. This doesn't just serve as a counter stadium to get your opponent's beneficial stadiums out of play, but it also gives you one extra item for your bag of tricks, which is allowing all of your dark Pokemon to use Feint Attack for 1 energy. Feint Attack just lets you snipe for 20, which is going to be really useful if you just have a bunch of damaged Pokemon on your opponent's bench. You just go, hey, I want some easy prizes, 20 to that one. This deck doesn't run any sort of gusting effect, and so your opponent is going to be able to retreat their way out of a lot of KOs, and this is your way to round up all of those lost prize opportunities later in the game. As you can see, the full deck list is pretty streamlined, like I mentioned earlier. Aside from just attacking with Dark Steelix, your only goals here are draw some cards, heal up the Steelix. The real trick is just making sure you have a TV reporter in hand early game. Otherwise, it's going to be a little more difficult to get the energy into the discard. Even if you're not able to accomplish that as quickly as you want to, there are 3 copies of R energy in this deck as well, which is essentially just a double darkness energy. So on turn 2, if you weren't able to charge up Dark Steelix due to a lack of energy cards in the discard, then you do have R energy to help make up that gap. These R energy though, they are going to be one and done. You can reattach them from the discard to a Dark Steelix, but that wouldn't make very much sense because it gets discarded at the end of the turn anyway, so it would be doing nothing from the discard. I really wish that you could make the R energy stick from the discard using Steelix first attack, but then this deck would just be able to ramp out of control so quickly. The only card here that we haven't mentioned is Rocket's Pokeball, but anytime you're running cards that have Dark in their name or Rockets in their name, it's just a no-brainer. You use Rocket Ball. The biggest comparison here is going to be, well, which is the better turn 2 deck, Dark Slowking or Dark Steelix? Yeah, Slowking can deal more damage, but overall I would say that Dark Steelix is more consistent. Dark Slowking is more of a glass cannon in that it has lower HP, it's easier to knock out, whereas the entire point of this Dark Steelix deck is that your opponent's going to have to put in a lot of extra effort just to actually KO a Dark Steelix. Because your draw power and your search power is such a heavy part of this deck, you're going to have scenarios where, yeah, your opponent deals 80 damage to you, but then you just drop multiple life herbs, or you just drop all 4 potions from your hand at the same time, and then you just smack them back for 80 damage. This deck did show up and have some success at the 2005 World Championships, which I think confirms a little more that this is the superior turn 2 deck. Now, is it the best turn 2 deck in the 2005 format? It's got a little competition that we're going to talk about later in this series. And of course, we can't end this video without mentioning the fact that Dark Steelix is weak to fire and does get blown out by Blaziken. The EX formats are full of checks and balances against deck archetypes. That's one of the biggest reasons it's so beloved and considered to be the golden age of the Pokemon TCG. So if Dark Steelix matchups could avoid Blaziken or Macargo, then it was actually sitting in a pretty good position to win, even though its resistance is kinda nothing. That's gonna be all for this one. As always, leave your comments down in the comments section. Let me know what you thought about this deck. Let me know about how you would personally run it. Are there any more dark Pokemon decks from Team Rocket Returns that you want to see featured on the channel? Let me know. There's plenty more EX era content coming to the channel. Just stay tuned. I appreciate you watching this far into the video. I'll see you at the next one.